but these are the Purusha avatars of the material world. They're like the main creators of the material world, the Supreme Lord. So then there's these three features that I mentioned, and it's like gross to more subtle. HareKrishnaKC is very subtle. So, okay, Prabhu, you had a question or something? Simplify.
Like the sun represents light. We were all born into the soul. And then reach that point of self-recognition, meaning. Why we're born not knowing.
That is a very nice point, but this analogy that's given is very specific. And it's very specific to the point that I've been speaking and mentioning, that the Lord is one, and the Lord is present with every living entity. And He is expanding Himself, but He remains one. He remains whole. Just like the sun is one, and we go outside and we're all feeling the same sun. But He's feeling it individually, you're feeling it individually, I'm feeling it individually. So similarly, the Lord is within our heart, and I have an individual relationship with Him within my heart. But that same Lord is within His heart, and He has His own individual relationship. So what you said is very nice, but this analogy is very specific. So thank you for sharing. Is there something?
Where?
Sure. Which one? Oh.
Where everything is like all by it's like it's like in that. So but when the soul is like back on the false ego, actually wanting to think like whole, it appears not betrayal. The soul is really the observer, and there's no real control of those around which is taken away by the world's material nature. So, but we also hear we come to the spiritual level. That's when we really can choose the way that we want to serve. Like there's very there's variety of the spiritual level. So what is that factor? The most material nature, that the factor that keeps this. You explain that picture out of it, and the soul.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita this point that one who essentially sees and everything you just described. I mean, you're questioning it, but one who sees, like essentially this chapter, right? Krishna's explaining the field of activity, Kshetra and Kshetrika. So there's the field, and the knower of the field. So it's like I'm given a particular body, and a spider is given a particular body, and that knower of the field is a living entity within that field of activities, and then he has a certain interaction with the material sphere. And then we were reading last Friday, I don't know who remembers, but Prabhupada was talking in the purport, the 24 elements of material creation. So then, and I was remarking how he beautifully just, summarized the whole chapter of why it's being said. Anyways, so there's the knower of the field, and then the field of activities and why that happens. But ultimately, this is the part I can't remember, where Krishna says that, one who knows all this, he sees that, that he doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep, this is just the body interacting with its environment. So it's like, the spider, he has its natural way of acting. It's not like he's thinking like, oh, today I want to go, to KFC or something. It's just like he does what he does, we do what we do. So within that, it's very limited, actually, although, we may think it's full of variegatedness. So ultimately, this picture, this person riding on the chariot, see this, it's being pulled by these 5 horses. And if these horses are not under control, which represent the senses, then we're not making any decisions ourselves, actually, because it's just our senses running wild, coming in contact with the sense objects. So then the soul is actually just a witness to this like runaway train of desires and lust coming with contact with material nature. But one who is able to control the senses, subdue the senses, and they come from, what is it? There's Annamaya Kosha, there's Pranamaya Kosha, Jnana Kosha, Vijnana, Ananda. These are different stages of consciousness. So a lower state of consciousness, your consciousness is Annamaya, you're just thinking of food. How can I fill my belly? How can I get food? And we observe that animals, this is mostly where their consciousness is at. It'd be rare, it is rare that animals would come above this consciousness, maybe a very few. But then above that is pranamaya, noticing like energy, more nuanced than just focused on food, focused on life. Then jnana, knowledge, vijnana, realization of knowledge, and then Ananda, which is ultimately like the spiritual platform. So we have free will, and like I like how you use the word variegated for the spiritual world, because the spiritual world, it's funny because somebody could do the same activity for eternity, but it's full of all variegatedness because it's in connection with Krishna, who's the reservoir of all pleasure. Whereas in the material world, it seems like it's full of all variety and will try unlimited varieties to try to get pleasure. But it's actually all the same. It's just chewing the chewed. It's static. So one who has uncontrolled senses is naturally pulled by this and is controlled by the material energy. Whereas one who has controlled their senses, and if you think of like the hierarchy of that picture, there's like the senses, the mind, the intelligence, it's the driver. So, pulling away from the horses and bringing more into the intelligence to control the horses, then that chariot becomes more under control. So then there's a proper execution of free will. So free will, ultimately, if you analyze it, it's essentially, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to serve God directly or indirectly? If we serve God indirectly, then we have this illusion of freedom and unlimited variety, which I just explained is actually not so variegated. It's pretty stagnant. It's in reality just associating with the 3 modes of material nature in many different ways. Whereas when you directly serve the Lord, you're not associating with the modes of material nature, you're associating with the Lord directly, who's infinite. It's full of all variegatedness. So that's the difference. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, but
to switch. And feel good activities. You don't understand the human thought. Just be engaged. It's feel. It's feel. So let's see how we can cross over and actually understand how the thought and mind. I'm still interested in secrets, and it's just everywhere within me.
so Krishna said here, he says that Okay, in text 24, he said, one who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction, which is Chaitra, Chaitrika, he will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. Okay, then a couple verses later, he says, again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. So Krishna is saying, one who, I skipped over, or one, anyway. I don't want to look for it, but somewhere where we read here, he said, like, when one understands this knowledge, he attains to his nature, the transcendental nature. So Krishna is saying this, what we're talking about, when one understands it, he doesn't take birth again because he understands the intricacies of material world and transcendental world. So then he attunes his consciousness to that transcendental state. But then he says, if one can't do that, if one simply hears from authorities, then they'll be rightly situated in their worship of the Lord. So we have to hear from authorities. So we hear that we're not our body. And part of us can rationalize it and understand it, but part of us does not realize it at all. But everywhere we go in life, we have to hear from authorities. It's a matter of question of what authority do we accept. And Prabhupada, he gives the example. Okay, we want to be free and not hear from authorities, but say this example might be outdated now, but you want to find your favorite radio program, you go to the radio station and you see the schedule, and you accept that as authority. You're driving on the road, you stop at traffic lights, you accept, that traffic and government is authority. So we're always accepting authorities. We can never not accept authority, even if we try to be completely independent. So just a matter of where we repose that faith, that hearing. So we may not realize it, but if we continue to hear and serve those who are in line with that, then we're rightly situated. And when we're rightly situated, as long as we continue persevering, all the realization will come. Prabhupada gives the example of a kid. You could hand the kid a microphone and tell him, this is a microphone. And he's like walking in the microphone, like, this is a microphone, this is a microphone. And you're like, what is a microphone? How does it work? And he's like, this is a microphone. So he's right, but he might not understand why or what he's saying. But as he gets older, then he'll start to realize that, he'll question, he'll understand what it is. But because he heard from a proper authority, he is right. So we might not have that realization, but we have to use our intelligence to discriminate that, these authorities that we're hearing from are right. And by that, we can, if Krishna wants, you could have like this grand aha moment where, you have this like realization and it just like hits you. Or it might be built incrementally over a long period of time, like having to look and meditate and pray and, break down all of our barriers in every which way we can. I remember one time I was driving with Maharaj to Harinam, and I don't know how it happened, but he started talking about, that we're the soul, and I just took the chance to play devil's advocate and was playing the position like, giving all the support that, no, we're not the soul, we're the body. And then it was like a little league, like pitcher pitching to like a major league player. It was just like, oh, but it is nice because, I was playing a game, but in one sense, but in another sense, I'm actually trying to find all my doubts. So when we bring up our doubts with those who have much more vision in this, then we can start to chip away at all the barriers that prevents us from actually seeing that, experiencing that, believing that. Like recently, I don't know, a couple of months ago, I mentioned it before, but I was listening to this devotee talk about like scientifically proven near-death experiences. So then I was hearing that, it's like, oh, yeah, I have my own experiences, but I've, been away for them for some time, and then I hear these experiences, and it's just like, oh wow, yeah, it's pretty clear that we're not the body. Pretty clear. But it's easy to go day in, day out, day in, day out. You hear the same thing, and you kind of get bogged down by life, and you don't really experience it. So yeah, we have to hear from authorities. We have to continue serving with enthusiasm, depending on Krishna to give the realization. But we also have to apply our intelligence, and really bring up our doubts and really focus on it. But simply, if we just continue on with devotional service, everything will be revealed. It's not that we have to separately endeavor, but sometimes we may have to, because we have a blockage that's preventing us from doing devotional service enthusiastically. But if we were to just continue with devotional service full of enthusiasm, all good will come from that. But sometimes, because we have a certain blockage, a certain doubt, we need to address those areas so then we can actually fully give ourselves to the devotional service. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
We're not our bodies. And how can we possibly be held responsible for the actions that our bodies fall into, even material nature, previous lust? How is this at all fair? How is this that the soul always cared every time somebody is covered?
In one sense, not, because Krishna says, the soul never kills, he cannot be killed, because he's encouraging Arjuna to fight. And in essence, he's saying that, all these activities you're worried about, it's like you're a soul, you have nothing to do with matter. But because we accept this false ego and that we identify with a matter, it's like if I drive a car, I'm responsible for everything that happens to that car. If I hit somebody, if I run over a kid, if I scratch another vehicle, it's not that like, oh, it wasn't me, that's the car. So then one could question, like, okay, if the soul's not actually doing anything and he's witnessing, how is he held accountable? We are accountable because we have free will, our free will of choice. And the whole point of the Bhagavad Gita is not to cancel out action. It's teaching us how to act properly in accordance with the Lord. And when we're acting in accordance with the Lord, then the effects of karma are no longer there. What does Krishna say? Mam chayo vyabhisharena bhakti yogena sevite sakanan samatitaitan brahmavaya kalpate. When one's engaged in full-fledged devotional service, then what is it? Mam chayo vyabhisharena bhakti again. Sakanan samatitaitan. Then the gunas, effects, cease to act. Krishna reiterates the same point in the Bhagavad Gita in many places, that when one's acting on the transcendental platform, he's not getting the reactions of sin, karma. So Krishna's teaching is nishkama karma yoga. Nishkama means no lust, no desire. So no personal desire. Karma yoga, doing action to link to Krishna. We're doing actions free from selfish desires, connect to Krishna. So when one's acting in that for the pleasure of the Lord, then the action and reactions are handled personally by the Lord, and we're not responsible. Otherwise, we're turning our back on the Lord so we can enjoy independently. So then we're held accountable for everything that happens. From a higher sense, you're a soul and you're not the body. So say you have your karma and you're worried about the reactions. That's not fair, the suffering that comes. So you walk down the stairs and you slip and you break your neck and you feel all this suffering. But if you're not your body, how is there suffering? You see what I'm saying? It's a matter of identification. We're identifying with the body as being ourselves through the false ego, So therefore, I'm working for fruits. I want the results. Therefore, I'm implicated to everything that happens. But one who's not working for the fruits, immediately one's detached. And then, what to say when one gives those fruits to the Supreme Lord, then he personally takes over that and controls that and helps purify the devotee. It's clear. Any other questions? It's a good point. I mean, it's nice to question these things further and really analyze it. Because Krishna says the soul can never be cut, never wet, never burnt, never withered by the wind. Like we are that soul, we are transcendental. We have nothing to do with this material world. It's like, I'm trying to think of an analogy, like, it's a mundane analogy, but like, I used to go to like a festival, for like a weekend or something. It's only like a weekend gathering and people are going to have fun, but like you can get so absorbed in that atmosphere that like becomes your life, and it's hard to let go, it's hard to leave, and there's all these little intricacies, duties and things that happen like within that weekend of events that you like get absorbed in. It's like it's only temporary, like we have nothing really to do with it. So similarly, this world, it's just temporary, and we find ourselves here and we get super absorbed in the whole thing, thinking like I have so many duties to perform, so many, things going on. But we actually don't. There's only one duty. It's to connect with Krishna, to connect with God. Nothing else we have to do. But then, that brings up the question of how to connect with them. Then that's the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna's not saying go do nothing. He's saying do everything, but do it for me. So in one sense, it's like, okay, that's the only thing we have to do. There's nothing else to do. But then what does that look like? That looks like, waking up in the morning, chanting your rounds, going out, doing this service, doing that service, so many things. So it is a life full of activity, not trying to cut out activity, as we're all well aware. Because the soul, by nature, is active. So we'll never be happy if we're inactive. If we just sit and have no service, nothing to do, and like just sit there. I mean, how long can you sit still in a room quiet and have nothing to do? How long can you sleep before, you wake up and you're just like, man, I gotta get up and do something. It's like we have to do something. We have to do it for Krishna. Then we become satisfied. It becomes purposeful. When we don't, then we become morose. We become frustrated. We become agitated. We become depressed. We become overly excited. Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, he reiterates so many messages in different ways. And, one is, don't be attached to happiness and distress. And we hear that, and I personally feel, I hear the distress word more than the happiness. Okay, I have to tolerate distress, all the miserable situations, but the happy, why do I have to tolerate happiness? Is it hard, like when you're happy, when the sun's shining and a bright day? No, but we have to tolerate happiness and distress because they're always coming and going, coming and going. If we get attached to one, then the other one comes and we're kicked in the back. So we have to be equipoised amidst it all. And how do we be equipoised? We do our service no matter what. No matter how I feel, I wake up and I come to Mangal Arati. No matter how I feel, I chant my 16 rounds. No matter how I feel, I strive to make service to the Guru the main focus of my life. We have to get out of these feelings. I feel this, I feel that. I don't feel like doing this today. I don't feel like this is just the mental platform. The nature of the mind is thinking and feeling and willing. Oh, I think like this. I don't feel like this. I don't think I can do it today. If you want to be free from stress and being depressed, Do not listen to this and just get up and do your duty. Just get up and do your duty. Whether you overate, you overslept, you didn't get enough sleep, somebody, stubbed your toe last night, somebody made fun of you, this devotee, did this thing and it made you depressed. Continue doing your duty and praying to Krishna for guidance and hope. And, Krishna's there, Krishna's reciprocating, he's the witness. He can bring you exactly what you need. And, we often face things that are difficult and challenging. And because we're not seeing Krishna's hand in everything, then we're seeing it separate from Krishna and we become disturbed, and then we want to leave or go somewhere else because we think, oh, that will be a better position. But how do we know that situation that brought us this different disturbance or problem isn't Krishna actually there in our life, like saying, hey, you need to work on this, you need to work on that, you're doing this, you should do that. So when one sees Krishna in all spheres of life, then every single moment is Krishna's there guiding you. Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita, that, to the sincere soul, he's always there, providing knowledge for us to come back to him. So if we really want to connect to Krishna at all times, he's there at every single moment, giving us the knowledge, giving us the inspiration to come to him. But because we're conditioned to lower modes of nature, we sometimes we want that, sometimes we tune it out so we can zone out, so we can become self-centered, so we can sleep extra. So, we're not perfect, but we have to keep trying to tune in to that frequency, tune into Krishna. It's like when we chant Hare Krishna, this Maha Mantra, japa or in kirtan. Yes, we should chant all the syllables that we should hear, but it's not just about uttering syllables. How many syllables are there that we could utter if we wanted? So many. And so many times I meet people and I tell them about chanting Hare Krishna, and they're like, oh yeah, that's so nice. When you chant different syllables, it brings a different effect in your body. It's very meditational to chant this syllable and that syllable. And I'm just like, no. These aren't just syllables. This is a divine name that is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So by chanting these names, you're directly connected to the Lord. So my point is that when we chant, it's not just about chanting and shutting off our mind and being like a robot. And, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. We really need to connect to Krishna through his holy name. To see that Krishna is there. Krishna's trying to guide us. Krishna's trying to bring us to him. So we should always be calling out with this mood, Krishna, help me come to you. How can I serve you? How can I see you in my life? Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And if we call out to Krishna sincerely with our whole heart, so much transformation will take place immediately. The Acharyas describe the potency of the holy name, chanting japa. But there should be a profound transformation very quickly, actually. But because our shortcomings and our offensive nature and our conditioned nature that we bring to it, it can be very difficult. But Krishna is a person, and he's not a robot, so it's not like I do this and I get this result. He sees that sincerity and how we're trying to call out to him. That day when I'm chanting and I'm just like really agitated and I can't sit still, or I'm sleeping, and I'm just like, all right, Krishna, I'm still going to try to do this just for you. Krishna sees this, and he might not respond and reciprocate like that very moment, but he does. So the more days that we put in where we don't want to wake up, but we do get up. We don't want to chant japa, but we stay there and we fight and we push and we chant japa. Krishna becomes very pleased that he can shower blessings upon us. But like I said, due to our fruitive mentality, we're thinking, oh, he needs to give me the results now. He needs to make it easy now. I don't have a taste now. This is still trying to control God. I do this activity and then he's going to give me this result. So then why do we become disturbed? Because we're not getting the result that we think that we're due. The more that we just chant for Krishna's pleasure and whatever he wants, he'll bring. I mean, whether he gives it or not, that mentality is much more peaceful and free because you're not holding on to some desire of how things should go. You know, we often talked about surrender to Krishna's, but a lot of times we approach surrender, but we have this idea of what surrender will be like or what it will look like. So we want to surrender on our terms. This isn't surrender at all, actually. So then over time, Krishna's there purifying you. And it's funny because you could be here even 6 months or a year and you can get flashes of like how you used to view things when you were here for like a week or a month. And you're like, man, how did I start doing all these? How did they get me doing this service and that service? How did they got me to, because Krishna's there. He's enticing you. He gives you some nectar, some realization, and you do more and do more. And then you hit some difficulties, disturbances, some resistance, and you push through that and you do more and you do more. Krishna's reciprocating. And all of a sudden you get to a point you're like, man, how do I have a sheep's head? How do I have this like orange cloth, So Krishna's very tricky like that. But the more we just keep giving to him and we see how he reciprocates, eventually we should learn that, okay, I should just trust in Krishna and do things for Krishna and Krishna will take care of me. So over time, thank you everybody for hearing Bhagavad Gita. Thank you for your questions and participation. Shrimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Shri Gaur Nitai, Ki Jai. Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhi Vichapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah.
Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Wow. I've heard of you. Yeah.